It was a cold evening when I first heard the story. My name is Jason, and I'm known for narrating stories that come from the darkest corners of reality, shared by people who have lived through terrifying experiences. I receive countless messages from people all over the country, recounting their encounters with the unknown. Some are unexplainable, some are chilling, and others are downright sinister. Today, I'm going to share one such tale, a story that was sent to me by someone who chose to remain anonymous. What they told me was so emotional that, as they spoke, their voice cracked and their words trembled with fear. There was no doubt in my mind that what they experienced that night was something out of this world. It all started deep in the rugged forests of the Pacific Northwest, far from any city or sign of civilization. The narrator, whom I will refer to as Adam, and his close friend, Ben, along with a group of strangers, set out on what seemed like an innocent expedition. They were searching for a legendary route that some claimed led beyond the mountains, to a path that could lead them across the Canadian border. The group was led by a guide they'd met through a mutual contact. Adam and Ben were both experienced in hiking, and they were eager for the adventure that lay ahead. However, the journey soon took a terrifying turn. As they trekked further into the mountains, they realized how dangerous and unforgiving the wilderness could be. The first day was uneventful. They climbed steadily, admired the towering trees, and marveled at the beauty of the forest that surrounded them. But as the days wore on, the trail became more treacherous. The weather turned, snow began to fall, and their food supply started to dwindle. By the third day, they were low on supplies, and their spirits had taken a dive. Their only goal now was survival. They knew they couldn't turn back, they were too deep in the wilderness. The cold, coupled with hunger and exhaustion, made their situation dire. Still, Adam pushed forward, determined to make it to the end. But the group started to split up. One by one, they were left behind, some unable to continue the journey. That night, after the sun had set, Adam and Ben found themselves alone. They decided to take shelter, as they were no longer able to keep up with the others. They found a small, secluded spot in the forest to camp, hoping for rest and to regain some energy before continuing on. But the forest was not as peaceful as it seemed. As night descended, the air grew thick with an eerie stillness. The only sound was the occasional rustle of leaves and the far-off howls of wolves. That was when Adam first felt it, an unsettling presence, as if something unseen was moving just beyond the tree line. He tried to shake it off, but it persisted. The forest seemed to come alive with whispers that no one could understand. It felt as if the trees themselves were watching them. It was then that they heard the distant sound of something or someone moving above them in the trees. The sound was faint at first, but soon it grew louder, as if something was leaping from one branch to another, following them. Adam turned to Ben, his voice shaking with fear. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Ben didn't answer. He simply nodded, his eyes wide with terror. Neither of them dared to move, for fear of making a sound that might alert whatever was stalking them. They stayed motionless, eyes darting around the forest, trying to peer through the thick darkness. The sound continued, the eerie rustling above them, growing closer and closer. But no matter how hard they looked, they couldn't see anything. Whatever it was, it remained hidden in the shadows, its form impossible to make out. As the hours passed, fatigue set in. Their energy was nearly gone, and their bodies were starting to shut down from hunger. The constant fear made it even harder to keep their eyes open. Their vision blurred, and their minds began to play tricks on them. Suddenly, they saw movement in the distance. Figures emerged from the trees. At first, Adam thought it was a mirage, but as they drew closer, he realized they were real. Strange, shadowy figures, dressed in tattered clothing, walked toward them, carrying bundles of food and water. "We've been saved," Adam thought, his exhaustion momentarily lifted by the sight of the strangers. The figures stopped in front of them. One of them bent down, placing a hand on Adam's shoulder. The touch was cold but gentle. He spoke in a language Adam didn't understand. The strange figures then sat down, offering them food and water. Adam could barely comprehend what was happening. His mind was foggy, and his body was on the brink of collapse. But he took the food eagerly, drinking in large gulps. The figures didn't speak again. They simply sat in silence, their eyes fixed on Adam and Ben. It was as if they were watching over them, ensuring they ate and drank enough to regain their strength. Once they had rested, the figures stood, silently gesturing for Adam and Ben to follow them. Adam and Ben obeyed, too exhausted and confused to argue. The figures led them further into the wilderness until they reached an old, dilapidated cabin. As they entered, Adam noticed that the interior was bare, save for a few old, dusty items. There were no windows, no signs of life. The figures disappeared into the shadows, leaving them alone in the cabin. Adam tried to make sense of what had just happened. He couldn't. All he knew was that without the help of those strange figures, he and Ben would have surely perished in the mountains. Weeks passed, and Adam and Ben eventually made their way back to the city, their journey over. But something was different. Adam couldn't shake the feeling that the things they had encountered in the mountains had followed them. The atmosphere in their apartment was thick with unease. At night, Adam would hear soft whispers, as if someone was speaking just beyond his reach. Sometimes, he would wake up in the middle of the night to find a shadowy figure standing at the foot of his bed. One night, Adam decided to confront whatever was haunting him. He went to the local library, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain the strange events he had experienced. After hours of searching, he came across an old book that described creatures known as the Watchers, beings that lurk in the wilderness, watching over travelers and guiding them, but always with a dark purpose. The book warned that if someone encountered a Watcher and survived, they would be marked for life. The creature would follow them, silently observing them from afar until the time came for them to collect their due. Adam realized with a shudder that what he had encountered in the mountains were not human beings, but these very Watchers. The food and water they had provided had not been an act of kindness, but a trap, a way to ensure they were kept alive long enough for the Watchers to claim them later. As Adam read further, the book spoke of a ritual, a way to banish the Watchers from one's life forever. But it was not an easy ritual. It required sacrifice, and the cost could be great. The whispers in Adam's apartment grew louder, and soon they started to feel more like threats than warnings. The Watchers were coming for him. Days later, Adam found himself standing in front of the same dilapidated cabin in the mountains, the very place where he and Ben had been saved all those months ago. He didn't know how he had found it. It was as if the Watchers had guided him here, pushing him to confront them one final time. The wind howled through the trees, and the sky was overcast, casting the forest in an eerie, dim light. Adam stepped into the cabin, his heart pounding in his chest. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay. As he ventured deeper into the cabin, he felt it, a presence. The Watchers were here. "Come closer," a voice whispered from the shadows. It was the same voice Adam had heard in the forest that night. "You cannot escape what you have already encountered." Suddenly, the room was filled with shadowy figures, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They circled around Adam, and the air grew colder with each passing moment. But Adam wasn't afraid anymore. He had come to end this. He had come to put an end to the terror that had plagued him for so long. With a deep breath, Adam recited the ritual from the book, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. The Watchers shrieked in fury, their forms twisting and writhing as the ritual took hold. Adam could feel the power of the ritual coursing through him, and with one final incantation, the Watchers vanished. The silence that followed was deafening. Adam knew he had won. The Watchers were gone, and he was free. But even now, years later, Sometimes, just as the sun sets, he feels the chill in the air and hears the faintest whisper in the distance. He knows the Watchers may be gone, but they'll never truly leave him. And neither will the memory of that night, the night he journeyed beyond the border into the heart of darkness. Some journeys are not meant to be taken. When the wilderness calls, it can be more than a path, it can be a trap. And sometimes, the things that seem like salvation are the very forces that will drag you into the depths of fear. Always be cautious of what lies beyond the edge of the known, for it may come for you when you least expect it.